Alcatraz, the prison built on an island surrounded by water from all directions. The prison that was used as an example and believed to be the most fortified prison in the world, and maybe even in history. After many attempts to escape from it, not a single operation was successful, except for one. A story that may have happened to you in the past, but today, you will hear it with new details that I don't think you've heard before. How is it going, guys? Welcome to Underworld Tales. Today, as promised, I'm going to tell you the story of the great escape from the prison of Alcatraz. This story happened in 1962, which is about 60 years ago. Many people have talked about it, and it may have happened to you before. But today, I've brought to you some very exciting details that I think most of you haven't seen or heard of before. And of course, I'm going to narrate it in my own style. And those who follow me know that I'm a person who loves details. But the nice details, the details that give you the right vibe of the story and show you how these people felt and how they thought. This prison was opened in 1934, and for 28 years, no one was able to escape from it, except in 1962. And only a year later, the prison was closed in 1963. This prison was put in by people who wanted to tell them, "You're done. Forget the idea of getting out of this prison before the end of your sentence. Forget it. There is no escape, and there is no outside world at all, not even in your dreams." That's why they put in this prison some shy criminals who were afraid to escape. One of the most famous examples of some of these people was Al Capone, the leader of the famous American mafia gangs. And then there's Machine Gun Kelly, a well-known gang leader and one of the most dangerous criminals. Erase the idea of running away from your head, don't even dream about it. I mean, Alcatraz was like a game over, the end of the game. With all of this, do you think that a group of criminals will stay in their place without trying to escape? Of course not. During the time when Alcatraz was open, there were 14 attempts to escape, but all of these attempts failed, and they were either caught or killed. It wasn't just one attempt, which is our story today. This is the escape that will destroy the Alcatraz's reputation. It will destroy the fortification myth. So let's start by introducing the prisoners who planned and executed this operation. There were 4 of these prisoners. The first one is called Allen West. The second one is called Frank Morris. And the third and fourth are actually 2 brothers named John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. Allen claims that he was the one who had the idea of escaping. So imagine that you are the one who had the idea, and your friends are running away, and you are not. Imagine that. Anyway, these 4 had previous operations to escape from prison. But of course they got caught after that. And as we said, those who try to escape from prison, they bring them on the scaffold to get the idea of escaping out of their heads again. Before we get into the details of the events, I'd like you to try and memorize the names of these 4. Just their first names: Allen, Frank, and the brothers John and Clarence. This might be a good thing to follow the details of the story in a better way. And as I told you before, the person behind the main idea was Allen West. Prisoners were given jobs inside the prison. Cleaning jobs, carpenter jobs, reforms, and so on. And one day, the mission was to clean the ceiling of the cellars dedicated to Allen West. The place he's in right now is the area above the prisoners' cemeteries. He was cleaning this area and noticed that there's a ventilation hole leading to the prison building's roof. I feel like this hole might be weak because it's not covered with cement like the other holes. It has iron bars, of course, but if someone wanted to get out of it, it would be much easier than any other hole. So if he finds a way to break or cut the iron bars on the opening, it's possible that this is the way to get out of prison. So Allen West went and told Frank Morris about it. Frank Morris was locked in a cell next to his cell, and both of their cells were above the ventilation hole that Allen West discovered. So Frank Morris started to think and come up with a plan to escape. I mean, it's true that Alan West was the one who came up with the idea and discovered the hole, but Frank Morris was the one who came up with the plan. Because he was the smartest of them all. In reality, according to prison records, this man had an IQ of 133, which means he was very, very smart. Not that he reached the genius level, but this IQ level is considered one of the top 2% of humans in the world. So Frank Morris started to plan, and the first thing he did was to call John and Clarence. He called them to join him in this escape plan. The very small distance between their was one of the most important factors that helped them to communicate permanently. The only way to escape through the opening of Alan West's cell roof was through a passage behind their cells, which means that these cells behind it, there are corridors for medical supplies. The goal is for them to get out of their cells to this corridor, and they will be able to get out of the pipes easily until they reach the ventilation opening above. From there, they cut the iron bars on the opening, and then they will be able to get out of the prison. But the question is, how will they be able to get out of their cells? To this passage behind it, the answer was the small ventilation openings in each of their cells. But they were very small openings. It was impossible for them to pass through it with their huge bodies. Frank Morris, who became the chief of operations, and the mind behind the plan, noticed that the prison walls became very weak. It had been a long time since any maintenance was done on it, and especially that the salty seawater had a huge impact on the prison walls. So in reality, it became easy to dig in these walls. But to dig them, they needed tools. But where could they get such tools? The guys somehow managed to escape a tablespoon to their cells. They kept digging day after day. And of course, as you can imagine, the operation took a very long time. They were digging in the walls with a spoon. It took months until they were able to expand these openings to a size suitable for their bodies. During this period of digging, they have to keep their plan as a secret. They shouldn't let any of the guards see or hear them. One of the theories says that they were usually working when the other prisoners were playing their musical instruments. Yes, every night the prisoners were allowed to play their musical instruments for an hour to an hour and a quarter. So it is believed that they were working the most during that hour, because the sound of the music covers the sound of the digging. And sometimes there were maintenance workers doing it in the prison, so it would be annoying. So the guys would start digging at any time they felt that the guards wouldn't hear them. And of course, there was always at least one of them watching the situation and the place, and see if there's a guard coming to check on them or something. Because there were a lot of guards in Alcatraz prison, which means that the guard ratio was higher than any other prison in America compared to the number of prisoners, of course. And these guards were always doing statistics and counting the number as a surprise to the prisoners at any time. At any time, you expect them to suddenly say, "Let's count you," so our friends had to keep their eyes open and stay alert. What helped was that the other prisoners who were in the cemeteries around them were aware of their escape plan. They could see them while they were digging in the wall, and none of them want to disturb or anything. In fact, they were helping them.
Myself, when I was a prisoner here, anyone that attempted to escape or wanted to escape, I'd help them all I can.
In an FBI report, it says that it was mentioned that the number of prisoners who knew about the escape process could reach 80. Not a single one of them spoke. 80 of these prisoners were about half of the prisoners in Alcatraz at the time. Can you imagine? Half of the prison knows, and not a single one of them said a word. During the excavation process, they needed to cover these openings. It's not good to leave these openings exposed while they're digging. So they made cardboard boards, made them prison furniture, and painted them with the same colors as the walls of their cemeteries. They also used some cement to hold them in place. These cardboard boards led to the mission of covering the openings. On top of that, they were careful to put any objects in front of these openings, like instruments and music, or clothes, or anything they had in the cell to cover it more. Anyway, finally, After several months of work, they were able to dig enough openings to let their bodies pass through them. But this digging process was just the first stage. Their goal wasn't to get out of prison, and that's it. They had to find a way to get out of the island. And maybe this was the most difficult stage. So to cross the water, they had to make a boat somehow. They had to find a way to make a boat. So they found an article in one of the mechanical magazines that was in prison. They found an article talking about how to make a rubber boat and a lifeboat through the raindrops. And the raindrops were widely available in the prison, and no one was counting them. So little by little, they started collecting the raindrops and stealing them from everywhere in the prison, and the other prisoners were cooperating with them and helping them. So they really managed to collect 50 raindrops. But now the problem is, where were they going to store all these materials? And they also had to find a space, like a workshop, where they could work to make the rubber boats and the safety nets. So where could they find a space like this? The only suitable space, it was the area where Alan West discovered the opening of the incinerator. But the problem with this area is that it's exposed, and there are guards who are always there and keep an eye on the prisoners who work in this area. So what's the solution? Alan West, with Frank's instructions. The smart mind made a very smart trick, and maybe this was the most important trick in the whole escape process. Alan West always had a mission to clean this area. So he convinced the guards that he had to hang up some mats and sheets to cover the walls of this area. This is so that the dust doesn't go down, and he cleans it up. I mean, he kept doing things like throwing the dust over them to show them that this is a problem, and he must solve it by covering the walls. And indeed, the plan succeeded. They now have a beautiful area and a great place. So they really turned this place into a respectable workshop. They were able to run away with many tools to help them in their work. But of course, one of the main problems is that they will not be present in their prisons. The guards always look at them in surprising times. So what would they do if one of them was working upstairs and suddenly a guard passed by his prison and did not catch him? Here you will ruin the whole plan. So what did they do? They made fake heads to make the guards think they're asleep. I mean, all of their work was done at night, so they put these heads on pillows and cover them with blankets. And when the guard comes to check on them at night, he'll see the head sleeping on the pillow clearly, and he'll immediately go to the prison after that without even thinking about it. And these pictures you see in front of you are the real images of the heads that are still preserved to this day in the prison's archive. The question is, where did they get the materials? In fact, all the materials were available. All they needed to make these heads was a little soap with cement dust that they took from digging operations. They brought some toilet paper and mixed it with a paste that they took from a prison room. They also had nails that they took from a prison room. They mixed it with each other and managed to make these heads. But the most important part of these heads was hair. But where did they get it from? Clarence Anglin, one of the brothers, was working as a barber in prison. He would bring with him the amount of hair from the prisons until they had enough hair to put on the shaved heads. So this is the way they used to go out and work in their secret workshop every night, which was above their cells. Of course, there was a difference between them. They didn't all go out together once. This situation continued for 2 months, and they were working on the rubber boat and the rescue suit. And after they finally finished, the promised day came. The day of the Great Escape was on the 11th of June, 1962. After the time came to sleep and the sun went down, the lights of the prison at 9:30 p.m., the 4 prisoners began the big escape process. Each of them put the head of the victim on a pillow and covered it with a blanket so that if any guard passed by them, he would think that they were asleep. They opened the ventilation holes that they kept digging in the past months and went out to the back corridor behind their cells, the corridor that will lead them to their workshop, and then to the opening of the ventilation that was going to take them to the prison floor. But only 3 of them got out of the cells. Who was missing? The one missing was Alan West. Alan couldn't open the air vent in his cell. It's not clear what exactly happened, but it seems that he used cement and more than necessary materials to cover the opening. And because he hadn't opened it for several days, these materials were stuck in a big way, and digging them again wasn't easy at all. When the other three saw the situation, they told him, "We will come to you and prepare the boat and other things, and you try to catch up with us as soon as you can." So Alan West kept trying to dig in the vent of his cell, and the three others came forward. The first thing they did was prepare the rubber boat and the emergency suits. Then they removed the iron rods that were on the opening of the air ventilation that was going to take them to the prison floor. After the preparations were finished and Alan West couldn't get out of his cell, they decided to leave him behind. They agreed before that if any of them had a problem, the others would move forward and leave him behind. And that applies to all of them. But imagine the frustration that Alan felt. I mean, he's the one who found the ventilation opening and worked with them for months. And in the end, he couldn't get out of his misery. Imagine your feelings if you were in his place. Just imagine the frustration that will come to you. Anyway, the other three, Frank Morris and the two brothers, John and Clarence, they managed to reach the surface and slowly sneaked until they reached the ropes, which were just a net. They were able to cut it easily and cross it to the beach and tear. They were able to blow the balloon with the wind through a playing machine owned by Frank Morris. Of course they edited it so that it doesn't make any sound. It was just blowing air. At 7 a.m., the alarm went off and the morning routine started. Every prisoner had to stand in front of the guard. When they reached Frank Morris's prison, the guard started calling him. "Frank, get up!" But no response. So the guard put his hand in to move his head, and it was a shock when his head fell down on the ground. Of course, the prison warden was immediately reported, and the warning bells were turned on, and a very, very extensive search operation began everywhere. And of course, the authorities and a large team of the FBI were reported to help in the search operations. And the first person who was asked was Alan West because they saw the opening in his locker room. He couldn't hide the fact that he was one of the team that tried to escape. When they found out about it, he was apparently cooperating with them because he had no other choice. But he hid some information so he wouldn't find out what his friends would do when they reached him. Alcatraz guards wiped the island completely. There was nothing on the island. And this really confirms that they went to the sea on their boat. The authorities and the FBI used their boats to wipe the entire area around the island. They didn't leave any puddles around it except to wipe it. At the same time, the investigators were investigating the prisoners one after the other, but none of them was willing to talk about any useful information. As we said, the prison force's search process was expanding more and more very quickly, and it was considered one of the largest search operations that the FBI did in the. But the group disappeared. They had no effect at all. And from that day to this day, they did not get any effect of these three. And indeed, the process of escaping from this complicated cataract was a successful process. On all levels, the investigations didn't stop. They continued for many years. The FBI continued to investigate this case for 15 years until they handed it over to the local police. The FBI investigation officially ended as a result of these three drowning in the sea. But was this result real? The most important evidence they used to support this theory that was discovered after the search. They found a plastic that was made from the same materials that the raincoats were made from. The same raincoats that they used to make the rubber boat and the safety suits. So inside these bags that they got later, there were pictures and messages that clearly indicate that they were related to the brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. They had pictures of them and their families and messages that they were writing to them in prison. So the contents of these bags are supposed to be very expensive for the brothers, and it is impossible for them to leave them unless they were drowning or died in the middle of the sea. So they say that was the biggest evidence of their drowning in the sea, But at the same time, many experts say that it's impossible for any of them to have a body that was found on the beach or was found during the sea operations. Their bodies should have been found easily if they had really drowned. Their bodies would have been floating in water. So it's reasonable that they didn't find a single body. With all the extensive research that they did, this was for many of the experts not logical at all. And then there is a famous picture that is said to be of the two brothers, John and Clarence, which appeared in 1975. And it is said that this picture was in Brazil, meaning that after their escape, they moved to Brazil and lived there. But also this picture in which they took and gave a lot of words. Is it really theirs or not? There is nothing 100% sure. And also the mother of these two brothers, of John and Clarence, was receiving flowers from time to time from an unknown source, an unknown messenger. Who is this unknown person who sends letters of condolence and flowers to their mother without any evidence? Also in 2013, it is said that there is a letter. This letter, this person who claims to be John Anglin, says that he really escaped and succeeded in escaping. He and the two with him. But now in a bad condition, his age has advanced to 83, and he has cancer. So he is ready to surrender himself in exchange for treatment. And there are lots of theories that kept on appearing. But that's it for today, guys. Still here? Wow, you're the best. Thank you so much for watching until now. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get notified about the upcoming stories. Have a good day.